You can do everything your parents told you to do with money and still end up broke. Pay your bills on time. Don't carry credit card debt. Save a little every month. Avoid big risks. Follow every single rule and still watch your bank account go nowhere for 10 years straight. That's not a hypothetical. That's Marcus. Marcus is 31. He's never missed a payment in his life. He has a savings account. He doesn't gamble, doesn't buy lottery tickets, doesn't lease a car he can't afford. By every measure, his parents would recognize he's doing it right. And yet last year, his net worth went up by $1,100. $1,100 in 12 months while working full-time and doing everything responsibly. Here's the part that should bother you. Marcus isn't an outlier. He's the median. Because there's a category of financial behavior that nobody warns you about. Habits that feel disciplined, feel mature, feel like exactly what a smart adult is supposed to do, and are quietly working against you the entire time. Not reckless spending. Not obvious mistakes. The sneaky kind. The kind that come dressed up as good decisions. My name is Cole, and I spend an unreasonable amount of time studying the gap between what feels responsible and what actually builds wealth. Because it turns out those two things overlap a lot less than we assume. If you've ever done everything right with money and still felt like you were standing still, stick around, because today we're going through 7 of these habits. And I'll warn you now, habit number 4 is the one that convinces the most financially literate people in the room, the ones who think they're too smart to fall for it. They fall for it constantly. Let's start with the one that's the most disguised as virtue. Habit 1. Treating I paid the minimum on time like a financial win. Somewhere along the way, we decided that paying your credit card minimum on time every single month was responsible behavior. It's not irresponsible, sure, but it's not the win it feels like either. Here's the math nobody puts on the statement. The average credit card balance right now sits around $7,800 at an interest rate north of 22%. If you pay only the minimum on that balance, you will hand over more than $10,000 in interest before it's gone. $10,000 on an $8,000 mistake, stretched out over 2 decades of minimum payments. And here's the trap inside the trap. Paying on time protects your credit score. So your score stays healthy, your bank statement looks fine month to month, nothing feels urgent. There's no moment where alarms go off. It's not a crisis. It's a slow leak. And slow leaks don't get fixed because nothing about them feels like an emergency. You're not failing. You're just quietly funding somebody else's retirement with your interest payments while feeling fine about it. The fix isn't complicated, it's just unglamorous. Anything beyond the minimum that you can throw at that balance is a guaranteed 22% return on your money. There is no investment on earth that reliably beats paying off 22% debt. None. Habit 2. Calling your emergency fund savings and letting it sit in a checking account. This one feels responsible because at least you have money set aside. That's already better than the roughly 1 in 4 Americans with 0 emergency savings at all. So if this is you, you're already ahead of a real chunk of the country. But here's what's happening while that money sits in a regular checking account, earning basically nothing. Somewhere between 0.5% interest. Inflation is eating it alive in real time. $5,000 sitting in a checking account for 3 years isn't $5,000 anymore in purchasing power. It's quietly shrinking while you feel good about having it. Meanwhile, a high-yield savings account, the boring kind insured the exact same way your checking account is paying out something like 4% right now. Same safety, same access, 8 to 10 times the return, just for moving it to a different box. People treat this like a hassle not worth the trouble. It's a 5-minute transfer that's worth hundreds of dollars a year, every year, for doing literally nothing different except clicking a different button once. Habit 3. Buying a slightly used car instead of new and calling it the smart move. This is one of the most repeated pieces of financial advice out there. Buy used. Let someone else eat the depreciation. And it's not wrong exactly. It's just incomplete, because most people who follow this advice still finance it over 6 or 7 years at a rate that erases almost the entire benefit. Here's the part that gets skipped. The average new car payment is now over $700 a month, and people assume used means dramatically cheaper. But a 3-year-old vehicle financed at today's used car rates, over 72 months, can land within $100 of a new car payment, while you're driving something that's already lost its steepest depreciation curve and still depreciating from there. You didn't avoid the trap. You bought a slightly cheaper ticket to the same ride. The actual smart move isn't new versus used. It's term length. A car loan stretched past 4 years is almost always a sign the car costs more than the budget allows, dressed up in a smaller monthly number. Shorter loan, smaller car, paid off faster, that's the version of buying used that actually works. Habit 4. Maxing out your 401k contribution and assuming that means you're set. Here's the one that gets the financially literate crowd, because contributing to your 401k is genuinely good. I'm not telling you to stop. I'm telling you that I contribute the max has become a kind of identity people wear instead of a strategy they actually examine. The problem is almost nobody checks two things hiding inside that account. First, the fees. The average 401k plan charges somewhere around 1% annually in fees, and some charge well over 2%. That sounds tiny. Over 35 years, the difference between a 0.5% fee and a 2% fee can cost you over $100,000 in lost growth on the exact same contributions. Same money in, wildly different money out, because of a number buried 3 menus deep on a website nobody opens after enrollment. Second, the allocation. A huge number of people get auto-enrolled into a target date fund, never touch it again, and have no idea what's actually inside it or what it's costing them. Maxing the contribution is step 1. Checking what you're actually invested in and what you're paying for it is step 2, and most people stop at step 1 and call the job finished. Habit 5. Refusing to ever carry any debt on principle, even when it's working in your favor. This one sounds like discipline, and sometimes it is. But debt aversion taken to an extreme creates its own kind of cost. And almost nobody calculates it because it doesn't show up as a number leaving your account. It shows up as opportunity that quietly never happened. Say you've got a mortgage at 3% from a few years back, and you also have $10,000 sitting around. The principled move feels like throwing it at the mortgage. But that loan is costing you 3% a year, and a basic index fund has historically returned something closer to 7 to 10% over time. Paying down cheap debt early instead of investing the difference isn't always discipline. Sometimes it's leaving free money on the table because debt has been mentally filed as bad without checking what it actually costs. This isn't permission to go take on debt recklessly. It's permission to ask one boring question before paying anything off early. What's the interest rate, and what could that same money be doing somewhere else? Sometimes the answer is pay it off. Sometimes the answer is the debt was never actually the problem. Habit 6. Treating a raise as money you've earned the right to spend. This is the quiet one, the one almost nobody notices happening to them in real time. You get a raise, and some portion of your brain immediately starts deciding what it's for. A nicer apartment, a car upgrade, a little more eating out because you've earned it. There's research on people earning between $300,000 and $500,000 a year, and a striking number of them still describe themselves as living paycheck to paycheck. Not because the income isn't enough, because every single raise got absorbed by a slightly bigger life before it ever had the chance to become wealth. The lifestyle expands at exactly the speed the income does. Every time, automatically gets wired into the nervous system. The actual move, the one almost nobody does because it requires resisting a very natural impulse, is to take a fixed percentage of every raise and route it directly into savings or investing before your spending habits even get a chance to notice the extra money exists. Not all of it. Nobody's saying live like nothing changed. Just enough that the raise builds something instead of just funding a marginally nicer version of the same to-paycheck life. Habit 7. Believing that not knowing your numbers is humble or private or simply not that important. This is the last one, and it might be the one underneath all the others. A huge number of people genuinely do not know their own net worth, their own interest rates, their own account fees, not because the information is hidden, but because checking feels uncomfortable, so it gets avoided indefinitely. There's a particular kind of financial anxiety that comes specifically from not knowing your exact number. Avoiding it doesn't avoid the anxiety. It just keeps the anxiety vague and constant instead of specific and solvable. The actual debt total is almost always less alarming than the dread of not knowing it. The actual emergency fund gap is almost always smaller than the vague guilt people carry about it. Every other habit on this list requires this one to be solved first. You can't fix a 401k fee you've never looked at. You can't redirect a raise you're not tracking. You can't decide whether to pay off cheap debt early if you don't know what your debt actually costs. The single highest leverage thing you can do this week isn't any specific money move. It's just opening the accounts and looking. All of them. Once, uncomfortably. That's it. Here's what ties all 7 of these together because it's not random. Every single one of them is a habit that looks responsible from the outside and gets praised by the people around you. Nobody compliments you for switching savings account providers. Nobody notices you checked your 401k fees. These aren't behaviors anyone applauds, which is exactly why they get skipped. Because we're wired to optimize for the things that get noticed, not the things that actually move the number. Marcus, the guy from the start of this video, isn't going to fix his situation with one big dramatic move. There's no single decision that turns $1,100 a year into real progress. It's going to be 7 boring corrections stacked on top of each other, none of them impressive enough to mention at a dinner party, all of them compounding quietly in the background while he goes on living exactly the same life he's living now. That's actually the most useful thing I can tell you. You don't need a better income. You don't need a lucky break. You need to go back through this list, find the 2 or 3 that are quietly true about you right now, and fix them this week, not someday. Because someday is where all 7 of these habits have been hiding the entire time. I'm not a financial advisor, and none of this is financial advice. It's just patterns run through the actual math. If one of these hit a little too close to home, that's not an accident. Drop a comment with which number got you. I read every one of them. And if you want to go deeper on any single habit on this list, I've got more on that right there on the screen. I'll see you in the next one.